Have you ever wondered why children are afraid of the dark? Freud believed it was a form of separation anxiety. More modern therapists believe that it's a mixture of reality and imagination that children find distressing. But I know the real reason children are afraid of the dark. It's because they're smarter than adults. It's because children know, in a way that adults have forgotten, that when they close their eyes, that's when they truly see. My name is Tommy the Spider Baby Saturday. I'm the world's wickedest wrestler. And I'm a creature of darkness.
I've used the wrestling as a marketing tool. I present myself to new editors at DC and Marvel as, I'm an actual supervillain. You know, all of your other writers are just writing fiction. When I work for you guys, I'm writing a biography, that kind of thing.
Out Magazine recognizes me as the first openly gay pro wrestler to come out on a national venue.
Not that there hadn't been openly gay wrestlers before Griep. There were. But the difference was they didn't come out in the press as gay. Griep's coming out at the very beginning of his career forced him to contend with Gorgeous George and the bad guy wrestlers who'd followed in his wake.
These wrestlers were just bad because they were gay. It's as simple as that, you know. And it was, in a way, a very lazy way for a bad guy to, as we say in the business, get over as a villain. You just wear feather boas to the ring. You just, wear a fancy robe or whatever. Act prissy. And something that's been very important to me is not to be the gay wrestler. Although once you sign off on that, you pretty much are. But I've never been, the pink flamingo. I've never been the rainbow arches or anything like that. Spider Baby, there's nothing intrinsically gay about that gimmick.
Ever since I started wrestling, I've been referring to editors as pencil neck geeks. So there is that level of overlap. Yes, that's a joke. Don't call your clients pencil neck geeks, kids. I'm just kidding. They're both telling stories. And professional wrestling, obviously it's a physical form, physical medium, but ultimately, other people have made this comparison. It's a pretty obvious, or I should say it's really more of a parallel. If you look at, most people think of comic books equals superheroes, which is not quite true. Truer in America than it should be. But, in that idiom, you have larger-than-life characters telling stories of good versus evil while wearing tights. Well, that's exactly the same thing as what pro wrestling is, too. And so I know I've earned a reputation in the wrestling business as someone who is really good about including the audience, considering the audience, and telling stories that are different. I think Spider Baby, this persona that I wrestle under, is a very well-developed character by virtue of the fact that I work as a writer. And I think of him, I have a whole biography for this character that I'm sure none of my other colleagues have even considered doing for their own. It's just, well, I'm a bad guy or I'm the good guy. It's something, a little one-sentence biograph. That's all you get. But ultimately, it really is just, whether it's a wrestling match or a wrestling feud or a short story or a comic book story, there just has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. It's as simple as that, and it's as profound as that. Well, speaking of query, I write for Lavender magazine, but thank you. I'll be here all weekend. My relationship with Lavender is very much like the Adam West version of Batman, where Commissioner Gordon just calls and says, well, the Riddler's back in town, and he says, okay. They'll just call me and they'll say, we want you to do an article on this topic or that topic. And I'll say, yeah, okay, I'll take it. I've never said no to Lavender. But I have written query letters, and I have proposed, various topics, lots of nerdy things. There was a Star Trek novel that had the first ever openly gay character in the Star Trek universe. So I pitched that to Out and Advocate and Instinct and magazines like that, and I sold one of those, and I don't remember which one. So it's I didn't try in that case. Again, I'm thinking like a marketer. Okay, the nerd market is all saturated. What if I took it to this other market and took their priorities and placed it onto this piece, wrote the pitch accordingly, and then got the sale? One of the many gifts professional wrestling has given me is an awareness of audience. It was something I didn't think about much as a writer. My mentality was sort of field of dreams. If we build it, they will come kind of thing. And now it's much more interactive. Of course, again, the idiom, the media are completely different in that you're in an arena with, or if you're lucky. My case, you're in the most guiltiest corner of the basement of the VFW, but wherever you're performing in front of live people, and you're listening to them and responding to them as they respond to you, that kind of thing. Obviously, you can't do that with writing, but it does give me pause and make me think when I write things. Who's going to read this? Particularly if an editor has approached me, I'll think, okay, so the editor is the one who matters because the editor is paying me, but beyond that, there's an audience, and who are they, and what would be interesting to them, particularly if it's a nonfiction project.
But for one fan, at least, having a gay wrestler like Spider Baby meant an awful lot.
And this old fan was telling me how, when he started off as a wrestling fan, Gorgeous George was kind of his only role model, and a pretty negative version of gay men at that. And he kind of looked down and he looked up and his eyes welled up with tears and he said, "I've been waiting for you for my entire life." And I said, "Oh, well, that's great." And so I got all choked up and I gave him a big hug and I said, "Well, thanks for waiting for me." And I shook his hand. I said, "Well, I'm sure I'll see you around at the matches," because the key to a good pro wrestling match is knowing when to end it. And I thought, I'm not going to top this emotional reaction. So I just excused myself and I went to the back. But it's haunted me in a good way ever since, in that when I did what I did, when I came out before my first match, when I was covered by Out Magazine and all the rest, my intention was to offer myself up as a possible role model to teenage boys who were also in love with wrestling and were having the same problem I had and this other guy had of extremely negative stereotypes in pro wrestling. Here's a wrestler who's saying he's openly gay, and then his gimmick has nothing to do with being gay. Doo-dah, the end. Being gay is not so bad, kids. That was it. The idea of a guy in his 70s being moved by that had never occurred to me, and probably was the single most touching interaction I've had with a fan, and I think about it fairly often.
Desperation is the enemy of sales. Have faith in yourself. Make yourself a terrific writer. Make yourself a factory of a product that you can be proud of, and everything else will just take care of itself. Stick to comic books because I think that's why I'm part of this panel. But if I know there's an anthology, whoop, holy cats. Oh, got attacked by a poltergeist, everyone.